Okay, so yeah, this is yet another unplanned video. So I uploaded two on Thursday as opposed to just the scheduled one for Friday. I understand that having a schedule is good, but at times, again, human beings exist beyond these channels. Also, the world and the news, current events, be they drastic, be they non-sinister, also exist and happen, and at times it's just good to have the perspective of the unexpected in these situations. And obviously I understand that this isn't an obligation on my end, but just something I thought to do just in case maybe someone needed to hear something like this from someone like this and not from someone you'd expect this from. I have, following the incident that happened on, was it the 10th, the 9th? Okay, what's the day before September 11th? That is on the 10th. So it was very late for us in this part of the world, on the eastern hemisphere of the world, with time zone after GMT. So for people in the Americas, it was the daytime still of September 10. Then, of course, September 11, that's all I saw. Obviously, it's even possible some people, some feeds in some countries, wherever, they didn't even come across any of it. And if that is you, if, let's say, my referencing this situation is the first you're hearing of it, will I say you're lucky? In some ways you're lucky, but in some ways I think, obviously you know what's best for you, but I think you might be a bit shielded. Okay, so I'll just talk about it as it comes today, and this one is not even going to have like air cuts or edits. It's probably going to just be some 2-hour rant and I'll call it a day. But yeah, if, like I said, if this isn't your style, I understand, but I also feel that, like I said earlier, someone just might need to hear this, and I didn't want it to be that I was able to do this at this time and I refused it because of some branding situation or whatever. Even to create that kind of brand, sincerely, I don't even have like the gear, even the space itself that you need for certain types of recordings, and you understand. So I am going to speak on why is it that this one was like the wake up? Why is it that this situation is the wake up? Because a lot of people are saying they weren't involved, they hadn't spoken up on anything before now, but until now. So I want to throw my thoughts as to why people are all of a sudden, quote unquote, waking up. Now, don't be mistaken. Yes, I might not have been awake in the terms of how deep the whole US and Western world political polarity thing was, but I do have an idea of conflicts, quote unquote, because if I call the real world now, and it's possible you won't even see this video. So conflicts in, the countries, them. And of course, you can decipher, right? I want to leave that to you to decipher where I quote unquote stand. I mean, there are some things that they are so glaring. Like, you still want to stand on the side of the clear-cut wrong party. Okay, I haven't said anything explicit, so you should still be able to see this when it's uploaded eventually. But yeah, I am much aware of those ones. Don't even think, because when was it? Thursday was the first time I spoke about this, that it's now like this is my debut introduction to all this crap and all that. Don't think that one at all. It's just that to this specific American owned, that was when I'm like, is it this deep? So I wanted to just mention that hey, when it comes to essentials, obviously when it comes to my country, which is the second one, some people might be callous enough to accuse me of. I mean, I live in the country, so definitely any issue that it's facing, that it has faced and is facing, and hopefully not will face, definitely I'm concerned because, again, I live in the country. But also, there are problems that maybe because of the influence of a country like the United States, they just seize your feed without you even realizing it. You're at times more involved with things that concern the affairs of the US as a state, even with their non-global efforts. Like, take for example, this person ran a company that was specifically called Turning Point USA. Okay, so he didn't even pretend like, he had a global platform. He did because of YouTube and social media, but all his, or the most of his tours were between the US and the UK at max, because I'm seeing things like he debates some Oxford students or whatnot, and some people are saying he trashed them, some people are saying they trashed him. I'll just leave that to you to decide. So I just wanted to try and answer, why is it that many people are just waking up within this week? Prior to this guy's story, there was a mass shooting in a school in America as well. That one, I just saw the headline, but when unfortunately you just become desensitized to some things, and then of course your own nation has its problems, you have your own individual problems as well. So some things just fly over your head. But because of the ubiquity of, I spoke on Thursday, but it was on a Wednesday that it happened. So of Wednesday's leading headline, it just needed to be talked about, in my opinion. If need be, all these videos, what's there? The main ones are still within schedule. If need be, these ones will just be archived, and no one needs to bear the grunt of all these random YouTube opinions again. Yeah, so the leading headline of Wednesday really was scary, because it's so representative that a leading figure in their whole conservative space, right? People perpetuate these ideas that, in fact, now that I'm looking at it, I feel like that's where we in our country even import these ideas from, a lot of them. Like, the logic behind some institutions in our country are rooted in such beliefs and all those things, which is they can do what they want, but then again, them doing what they want, it's a ripple effect of harm. Let's just be real. So yeah, someone like that, such a prominent figure, literally, even I saw the president of the US did a half-mast for the guy. And of course, a lot of people critiqued the move, saying it's excessive. Okay, what is my opinion on that? On that action specifically, I mean, it reads as an abuse of power, but I don't know if this person was coincidentally also an elected official. If he was, then that's fine. But if he wasn't, which I am not seeing any headlines to that effect, all I'm seeing is podcaster. So yeah, if he wasn't, and it's not even like a Michael Jackson, who didn't even get this. Michael Jackson didn't get a state burial. It's not a ubiquitous figure, right? Beyond a politician, beyond some form of political activist in, if I say the positive light, many people have, unfortunately, which is something else I want to talk about, different views of what is positive, unfortunately. That tragically, let me not even say tragically, people have different views of what's considered positive. So today, inarguably, we can say someone like the Martin Luther Kings of the world would have deserved a half-mast on the days of their death. I don't know if they got one. I don't know if they got state funerals. That's easy for us to say because of decades now. It's not even up to a century, I believe, since Luther King died. So decades of education and reprogramming for the better to some degree, right? That is why we today can say, should MLK have died today, he would be worthy of that action, that symbol. But I imagine at the time, there were people, obviously, he wasn't fighting the air. He was fighting people. He was fighting ideas that people had. And it's not like everybody just woke up one morning and was like, oh, we've changed our ideas. Trevor Noah said something. Let me chip this one real quick. And I heard him say something. He said he has never met someone whose parents admit to supporting apartheid. Apartheid, I think, ran deep into the 80s, which is, well, we can call it insane today, but back then, it wasn't insane to them. They saw the Americans do their own civil rights thing. They saw other countries do their own civil rights thing. They were like, no. But today, no one claims that they supported you, and they are very much alive. If you are a teenager, or even in your 30s in the 1980s, it's even possible you're still alive. It's possible you have either parents or grandparents or great-grandparents that definitely were behind this, living in South Africa with you there, or maybe they migrated elsewhere out of fear of ostracization. So even back then, like just the same way many people are critiquing the outpouring support that this man is receiving, definitely there were people who criticized the love and support that the likes of Martin Luther King did in their time. I have no reason to doubt that, especially given America's history and how people are saying it's repeating, but from what I'm even looking at now, it's almost as if it's just been there. It's just that some parts were the featuring and now they're the main artist. You understand? Some parts were just in the featuring. They were on the track. They were on the album. But now they own the album. So this guy, Charlie, many people are saying he's not worthy of this. He pushed it. Literally the same words that they used for MLK. It's just that now it's easy for us to say, oh, no, that's unwarranted for MLK, even for people who support this Charlie person. So what then is the actual difference? Or is just the same thing again and magically the tables have turned without us realizing it? So to quickly kind of address that, let's address the ideologies at the surface level ideologies, because even MLK, I learned about him in school. I have also heard about him in many mini essays, write-ups. I haven't done like an extensive dive into his life, but from what I remember, they taught us about him in school. They taught us about him in RE class, and I think that lecture they taught us about Mother Teresa, who many people, for some reason, are even saying he was a bad person. That's something I'll be interested in looking into. They taught us about MLK and one other person, I think one of the political figures from Ghana, so I can't remember him. So MLK, they taught us, was a quote-unquote freedom fighter. That was the word they used. But from my baseline understanding is he was instrumental to getting past what I believe is called the Civil Rights Act. Is that the one they say LBJ passed? Yes, I think it should be. I'm not going to Google anything right now. All these things, it's going to be, if there's need for correction, it's going to be in future productions. Future recordings like these ones. Should I continue this in this format? So MLK was a freedom fighter for Americans of African descent, Black Americans, because despite the fact that slavery had ended, and even, quick one, do you know even the slavery that they say ended, they are saying that it wasn't even from a compassionate ground or a monetary ground, which is insane, but a win is a win. But that's that's despicable. It's despicable it's easy to say it's despicable now, but I'm sure even back then there might have even been one or two slaves that they had convinced, because you can convince people to support anything, even the things that will chain them down. We talked about people clinging onto their metaphorical chains just on Thursday. This is Saturday for me. I would be uploading this by the time even Western Hemisphere should have gotten to Thursday as well, Saturday as well. So, yeah, he fought for civil rights, I remember they told us the story of the lady in the bus. I think that's Rosa Parks. I believe also Aretha Franklin was somewhere in the movement. There's also Nina Simone. I'm talking about singers that I know that I also hear some things in their songs about this, and then I'm trying to fixate them to the movements. I also read a story that Marilyn Monroe, not necessarily that she was out there supporting, but that she used her influence in the sense that she did not attend clubs that wouldn't let colored, quote-unquote, colored performers to have stage presence, to perform. So MLK was, instrumental to passing across the Civil Rights Act. He is quoted with this, "I have a dream," and if I can remember the quote, the opening line correctly, is that human beings in America are going to be judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. Which, now we can be like, wait, so this is what somebody had to fight for. But back then, because of the social constructs that they had created, without realizing the wickedness behind those ideas they perpetuated for themselves, it was controversial back then. Genuinely speaking, a lot of people saw their fellow human beings, right? Same 23 pair of chromosomes, same blood red, same pair of eyes, same fingers, as inherently less than, for no tangible reason other than they were told to. And funny enough, I even discovered one, and I don't want to platform this person. Some of you might have an idea who I am referring to, but if you don't even think of it. I just want to highlight something that the person is doing. The person is trying to bring back these ideologies indirectly. I've seen a lot of insane things on my feed recently. I won't lie. I'm seeing some perspectives that I'm like, a grown human being in 2025, United States of America, opened their mouth to say this. But then again, you trace their history. It's coming from either their parents or the internet. So that was MLK. MLK led protests. And my guess is, I don't want to water down the process, okay? This isn't me watering down the process, but my guess is because of the protests, action was taken to outlaw redlining. I think it's the one they call Jim Crow. Jim Crow? Yeah, I think that's what they call Jim Crow laws. Laws that established inequality based on race. One question I always have for these, the races are unequal and are unequal people. When mixed race children are born, right? Even though at its core race is still a social construct, but because people have turned it to beyond the social construct, that's why we have to talk about it. But biologically, race doesn't mean anything. Okay, it's just funny. But biologically, race doesn't mean anything. Many scientists have come out and said in our DNA, there's no indicator for race. It's just like you have blue eyes, I have green eyes. You have long hair, I have curly hair. You are blonde, I have brunette hair. So, just a quick one for these people who say X race is better than the other one. But when mixed race people are born, what do you now do? Okay, he's half dumb and half smart. No. I've seen horrible things on my feed. I thought the video of the shooting would have been the worst thing I would see, and then, spend the whole day just trying to flip through all the critiques and support. But I have seen horrible things because the people who support him are also popping up now. And apparently, if you think, for those of you who, really know what he has said, I'm seeing some of what he said, and in my opinion, it wasn't good. So those of you who agree that some of what he said is simply not good and not helpful, go and look. Don't even go and look. Just, if you scroll long enough, you'll see some of the people adjacent to him, maybe not even his supporters per se, but just people in that, their right-wing thing, okay? They're just in that their right-wing group of right-wing people that just have some kind of thoughts, and they just be holding your jaw like, an American said this? It's crazy because I acknowledged also, yes, on Thursday that conservative thinking is the leading thought process in America, and I got that from the fact that Donald Trump finally won the popular vote in this past election. So I was like, okay, that's just a reflection of America's opinions change. But the conservatism I was thinking is maybe, they just like, uptight things. I was not thinking some kind of dastardly statements. I'm like, now is it here that the conservative is? That's insane. So MLK, that's what MLK did, a freedom fighter. We're branding him a freedom fighter now, but let's try and flip it and let's see how we can make him sound bad. I imagine that there must have been people who saw him as a disruptor of institutions. Let me use that word. And I'm sure that's even a nice word for what they must have been calling him. Definitely they were throwing him, N-word, reducing him to things we cannot imagine. But the root ideology, I guess, behind the hatred he must have received from his critics and his antagonizers must have been that he is a disruptor of the institutions that they have created that favor them, right? People whose entire lives depend on their undue advantage, right? Depend on social constructs that favor their biological and immutable characteristics. Obviously, they won't look back at threats to their lives as they know it, literal threats to their lives as they know it, because if that act was passed and there is no discrimination based on race, and somehow some child, despite all the struggles, the redlining, the poor school funding, is able to measure up and then compete with you for the same job, and then you, because you are so sure, you coasted through, not you, okay, Mr. X and Mr. Y. Let's do Mr. X and Mr. Y. And Mr. X is so sure because they've told him right from so that, you're going to get a job and all of that. So midway through his life, he realizes competition can happen. And obviously he wouldn't like that. So, yes. So on the flip side, MLK must have been a disruptor, a stubborn head. why can't he just pick himself by his bootstrap, which is one of the most diabolical statements you can make, that picking up by bootstraps thing. I heard it the first time in 2020 and I was like, how can somebody say this thing? It sounds good to the air on first class, but before you can concur that that is a good thing to say, please exercise some thought, okay? He can't just pick himself by the bootstraps. He's so arrogant. He's so greedy. After all we've done, some of them would have said something like, after all we've done for them. Can you imagine? You know? Some would have even, which is another grade of despicable individual kind of thought, they would have even walked in a religious angle to it, saying that what he's doing is unholy. You can call almost anything unholy, depending on how good you are with manipulation. So, yeah. So that's who MLK was to most of us today. I hope he was a freedom fighter. But to his critics back then, he was just a disruptor. So who is Charlie today? Now, Charlie is the definition of, based off of what I am even seeing, polarizing. And it's insane. It's insane. It's insane how two people can hear the same thing, the same set of words, but come away with two different conclusions. Charlie is an unashamed conservative right-wing commentator. That is his self-proclaimed job title was. Okay. Now, in a way, there's an activism he was doing as well, that to many people, we don't know the percentage of which amount of people were in favor of those ideas, but going based on of what the United States election, I think, was it even this year? Last year. Was it last year? It was last year. Oh, okay. Okay, as they said, they did the inauguration last year. That means if we are going to go by that, it's even the majority of people who would side with Charlie in saying things like, you know, they are saying that white people in America are facing it. And that might sound absurd to some people listening to this, but it makes perfect sense to the people in that crowd. And when they give their explanations, because I think the approach these people use is they'll first throw the controversial statements out, and then once you've obviously thrown back at them the "you're crazy," they'll now humanize themselves. So it's there should be a name for that kind of tactic. You know, you cast the wide net and then you're just catching. It's like fishing in cybersecurity. So they are fishing for debate. Debate is the "you're crazy." That's just what they want. They are not 100% going to get that bait, but they just want someone to call them crazy so that they can now make them look crazier when they eventually explain where those their hyperbolic statements are coming from. So at its core, if we're to go by the numbers, that statement isn't true per se. If we're to go strictly by the numbers of what's considered to be, I don't want to use that word again. In fact, I'm even thinking maybe I'll cut it out, but I won't. Okay, so let's look for a synonym. Let me think of a synonym. Going through a let's call it wipeout. So by the numbers, no, that isn't happening. At least from what the media is reporting, or that I've even bothered to look, is possibly happening. I don't know. But obviously the people that they're having these discussions with, who tend to be on the opposite side of the aisle, I don't like those words. I don't like this aisle side thing, because it's making it look like fundamentally corrupt ideas have legitimacy. So Charlie, he was an activist in the sense that he fought against the possibly inexistent, wipeout of the Aryan race. And I hate to laugh, all right? But let me be serious and really state his intentions as clearly as I can. without the comedy. So that was some form of thing I heard in passing. It's possible he just said it that one clip that I saw. But I don't know how, if that was a common talking point for him. He said something about Michelle Obama and Joy Reid I don't know what's even going on. I didn't even bother with that one. He was also, like I said, an espouser, an unashamed espouser of right-wing values. So right-wing values include things like being pro-life. So it's even the pro-life one that was even the controversial one. Most of the talking points really are controversial anyway, but the pro-life one was controversial because someone even asked him whether if his daughter or so, is pregnant at an age where she wouldn't want to be. And he says, yes, he will force her. Not necessarily that he will force her, but he just says the baby will stay or something like that. Wow. Okay. Then he also, because of a right-wing, so religiously he was just a defender of right-wing talking points. That's how I would. And because the right-wing people are the leading ideology population, like there are more right-wing people than left-wing people in the United States. Because of that, he naturally just magneted a lot of support from people with the money to really fund a lot of these events that he did and appearances that he made and all of that. Not to say that's not to reduce his career to snatching money from people who just wanted to satiate their biases. So what else do right-wing people support? They also support strict immigration laws. We can make sense out of something like that. When it comes to just the politics, I won't say that I don't have an issue. I won't say that I don't have an opinion. But when it comes to just actual politics, that's what we can have debates on, not the pro-life thing, because that affects actual life at the end of the day. I also said when it comes to like the gun thing, that's where we can have debates. But the thing about the gun thing is once you start, you can't roll it back. So now everybody is pro 2A by default in America. You just have to be like, okay, do we want it to be easy or do we want it to be hard to obtain a gun? So he was obviously pro 2A. You are either pro 2A or pro squared 2A. So he was pro cubed 2A. That isn't to hyperbolate, if that's a word, or inflate his views in that regard, especially given how he passed. He was a staunch defender of, people's rights to have a gun. He said even though, yes, gun deaths are just casualties or for unnecessary casualties and all of that, which is the statement that people have been touting around and say, okay, look how ironic that is. But that's not even the irony. I'm not even seeing irony in that one. It's the other things around this gun. It's not even the gun issue that was controversial from what I'm seeing. So, yeah, he defended those right-wing values and was seen as a hero for his bravery by the majority of the U.S. population today. If the results of the 2024 election are anything to go by. On the flip side, we don't even need to discuss the gravity of his words on the quote-unquote opposite side of the aisle. I don't like that statement at all. Yeah, so we've described these two people, MLK and Charlie. And now, what then is the actual difference? So you can see that both of them have critics and supporters, but somehow they were both on the popular side during their times, I think, because for MLK to have been able to influence an act being passed, maybe it's not the popular side, but he had or was able to earn political ammo to have the indirect influence in having the Civil Rights Act passed. Now, it's almost the same with Charlie because of Charlie and the likes of Charlie, America has gone from a nation that once literally chose, what was that guy's name, Joe Biden, right? Who is not a right-wing person that I don't think he's a right-wing person, even if he is not as right-wing as the current president, Donald Trump. So back in 2020, Joe Biden won by a clear margin, but because of the likes of, Charlie, they've been able to really spread what they believe to be a great message to many people, to the point where it's not even a case of, what was that thing in 2016, whether electoral college. So there wasn't even need for the electoral college again. It was just a clear win for the conservatives. So in a way, they both have the same, it's not the same. I won't say it's the same, but you can see that they both had influence to varying degrees. You decide whether it was the same or not. For me, it wasn't the same. Because one enacted a law and the other one just secured, not just secured. He didn't act alone. Neither of them acted alone, but, So yeah, the two of them, to the majority of the nation at their respective times, were both deserving of presidential attention. You understand? Because literally, from what I can tell, times have really changed for the different. I won't say it's for the worse yet, although it looks like it's for the worse, but for the different in the US. Because my perception of the US as someone who doesn't live in the US but consumes a lot of US media, was that they weren't a necessarily progressive country, but there were baseline values. Just for me to look through my feed and see that these values were being challenged viciously. So in both instances, there was outrage for their actions. And in both instances, there was overwhelming support. Well, we can debate the percentage of support for MLK. We don't know per se, because whatever statistics they must have had at that time, I wouldn't believe that they were well represented. But for Charlie, at least, if anything, the fact that majority of Americans now side with conservative values. Even where I'm from, do you know where he's popular? Do you know? He's popular here because we also have a lot of people who really subscribe to those conservative ideas in this country. So naturally, when you're building your feed on social media, naturally the likes of him and other people in his space will pop up on your feed, and they just gain fans from there. I also, from people in my country, I'm seeing comments like, oh, this is a war, this is a spiritual warfare. I'm sorry for the laugh. I'm sorry. I'm actually sorry. I don't want to reduce someone's heartfelt opinions to just baseless comment fodder. All right, I don't want to do that. So genuinely, I apologize for the laughter. It's just that when you see certain kinds of comments for the first time, especially when you're not involved in that space, and then you try to grasp a surface level understanding of the context with which those statements are made, it's puzzling to the point of laughter. So I excuse my laughter. But yeah, people are making comments like this is a spiritual warfare. They believe for it to be a spiritual warfare the way he was killed. He's been martyred, not he will be. He is a martyr. Don't even debate it. Don't worry. It's not you that will determine that one. I know what I'm saying. He is a martyr. People have already printed his picture and hung it. Not that I heard. I have seen. I have seen today his picture hawked. Today. Where I'm from, I'm not living in the US. His picture has been printed and hawked on the street. Ooh, okay. So, yeah. People, fans of this ideology, right, see this as a significant event, and he's been martyred to them. The way MLK de facto has been martyred, because MLK was also assassinated. So what then is the actual difference? Because if you've listened this far, putting MLK and this man, Charlie, in the same sentence must not be sitting right with you. Even some of you who support the right-wing ideas probably don't even favor this kind of comparison. It's not a comparison, it's just listing two examples of people whose assassinations were big deals. It might not have been as big as the other, but both were big news stories. So from what I can tell, and why one is quote-unquote bad and why the other one is quote-unquote not good, let me start with the one that many people say is good. When we talk about the Civil Rights Act, something like the Civil Rights Act, my understanding of what something like the Civil Rights Act is, we are literally talking about state recognition of human beings to function the same way as other human beings. That is, the state is officially demolishing a social construct that served a negative purpose, that served a delusion. Because that's where all those racist ideas come from, delusion. It is textbook delusion to tell yourself that because your race, or that you are a member of a race, quote and unquote, that develops such things. Mind you, okay, quick one for those people who make those kinds of arguments. You might see that your race, quote and unquote, developed the modern world. Let's assume 100% of the modern world was developed by your race. It wasn't you. I'm sorry for the laugh. It wasn't you specifically. It was people in your race, quite all right, but not you. You, probably, your own ancestors were probably just passers-by during the time of all these inventions. So when people credit their race to development of the modern world, quote and unquote, credit the people who developed it, not your race. All right, that's what we call famzine. I don't know the English word for famzine. Rubbing shoulders. Schmoozing, that's the word, schmoozing. Sucking up. That's just you sucking up. That's just you getting clout, exactly. You're just getting clout by proxy, really. When you say your race developed something, your race didn't. People that shared your race did something. But even if that's not avenue for you to diminish members of other races who couldn't be bothered to do the kinds of things that members of your race did, it's not the flex you've been programmed to think it is. All right, and yes, I understand that even if you have those kinds of ideas and you hear this, you'll have pushbacks. And I don't know if normally I would say, okay, comment your pushback, but I don't know if I want to even hear this one. Or I definitely want to hear it and really grasp the perspective fully, because there's some things you say that are point baffling. But there's also need to understand, and my hope is that should there be pushback from my end, it doesn't need to be here on YouTube, should there be pushback from my end, that you would be also open to it and not necessarily have a gridlock, my side. This my side thing is a prison. Let's call it what it is. It's a prison. All right. There are so many people who they are right wing, but they can't really get behind abortion. They can't really get behind the pro-life cause. You understand? So, but because they just want to be full right wing, and they're just trusting the process. This whole trusting the process kind of mentality it's a prison that you set for yourself. And this is, I imagine, is also where ideas like this held weight because they just kept telling themselves, oh, no, that's how probably they'll tell themselves that's how God made it. That's how people not only believe in delusions, but create policies and subdue other people based on their own delusions. It's a textbook definition of delusion. And I know that word sounds offensive, and I apologize to use an offensive word to describe it, but that's the only word that I can really reach out to right now within my vocabulary to describe such frame of thinking. So when the state, right, when actions have been taken by protesters and individuals of the suppressed class and aids from even the favored class, when such actions are taken and then the state resets to default system of life and dismantles a delusion, that is a good thing, near objectively, if not objectively outright. So you have, I've heard from movies, I've heard from essays, you have a tap, you say only members of race X should use the tap. Why? No, why? What would happen if members of race Y used that same tap? Why? Whatever preconceived notions you have of members of race Y were taught to you. Even if, for example, and here's another argument that they make, even here, this same Charlie person made this same argument. I saw the video. They call it a 1350 argument or something like that. Let me not use the exact numbers. But let's even be hyperbolic. Let's say 80% of members of race Y have committed murder. 80% of members of race Y. So across genders, across ages, 80% of members of race Y. So therefore what? I'm sorry for the laughing, but so therefore what exactly? Why are you bringing that up exactly? No, why? It's even questionable the organizations that collect all these statistics based on race. In my opinion, maybe the Americans would explain to you better why they collect statistics based on race. There could be some positives behind it, but me, because all this is just new, I'm just scrolling through videos, the ones that have popped up, and it's just what I'm regurgitating for you. In fact, let's go. 99% of members of race Y have committed murder. Oh, so therefore what? so therefore what? What is the conclusion? What is the conclusion? 100% of members. What then is the conclusion? So therefore, you understand, and I'm sure it's because some person lied to themselves that, members of race Y, they don't really know how to manage these things, therefore we just have to keep them away so they don't spoil our things and all of. You're just telling yourself, these are preconceived notions based off of misinterpreted data. You're drawing a conclusion from something that doesn't necessarily have to be the cause. Causation does not equal correlation. Correlation does not equal causation. So that is the ultimate goal, right? We're trying to establish in both instances, was their goal a good one or a bad one? So we've established, at least from what I can see, but if you have pushback to this, you tell me and be respectful. This is YouTube that you are reading this on. If you want to be explicit, find me somewhere else. So, the pushback he must have gotten is from people wanting to preserve that delusion without realizing that they are preserving a delusion. Without realizing that their rage, I imagine, must have been rooted in the undue advantages conferred onto them by a social construct, by a dominant social construct. But at its core, what was achieved was the dismantling of a delusion for the better, for the evident and I would argue objective better that I can see. Now, let's go to Charlie. The right-wing ideas are rooted in some delusion. For example, even if it's just this pro-life thing. Let me just use it because there are so many of these ideas that they classify as right-wing. There's a whole kind of, will I say education system? But no, I won't call it an education system, but it's a whole class of thinking. What's more important, your opinion or the opinion of the child bearer, the individual who is pregnant with the child? What is more important? You answer that question. Your opinion or the opinion of the one who bears the child? And, for many people, they are pushed back beyond logic, because logically, I don't know how you reason, but just from a logic perspective alone, clearly the opinion of the one who bears the child holds weight. So therefore, these people tend to, not in all instances anyway, rely on superficial arguments, and I don't want to use that word superficial because it sounds insulting a bit, but they rely on metaphysical arguments. So take, for example, you will hear things like, oh, I believe in X religion, so therefore, and my religion dictates that this is not good, simply because that religion that they either grew up in or were indoctrinated in later on in life is opposed to the opinion, so therefore they themselves are opposed to the opinion. They might even have the logic to see, oh yes, the opinion of the child bearer trumps the opinion of everyone else. But given the nature of the religion or moral guideline that they believe in, they would gaslight themselves essentially to believe that, well, I may not know why my religion says it, but because I have a good faith, a very strong faith in what my religion says, and I believe that no matter what, it's, the situation, what my religion says should hold weight. Now, let's even look at the people who try to not even include their religious belief in it, saying, I think their own argument is that life starts at X so early, in fact, right from the night that the insemination takes place or the fertilization takes place. That is their own argument that, that is a life, right? So that is when the argument has left the religious table. So then again, it now comes to a battle of what lives are worthy of preservation and what lives can be disposed, quote and unquote. Now, the scientific stance is, for the first couple of weeks or so, is that whole concept of life really isn't what we imagine it to be, but the pro-life defenders who defend from a quote-unquote scientific angle insist otherwise. So that's where the clash is. But ultimately, the opinion is now an opinion thing, and then the real question comes back. The opinion of a third party all the way in another country, in many instances, or the bearer of the child or potential bearer of the child, right? So when you push things that negate the autonomy, because that's what it's dealing with, the autonomy of the individual in that regard, are you doing a good thing or a bad thing? You can convince. No one is stopping you from convincing, but to impose with force, which is the argument they make, because when you push that a law or an act or a reversal, because it was legal, but they made a reversal, leaving it to the states. That one I remember, it was when I was in school, 2022. Now I remember that headline. So you push for a reversal, supporting the opinion of the child bearer. In my opinion, I don't think that's a good thing. You are free to convince. Definitely you are free to convince, but to mandate that in all instances, irrespective of the context, we didn't even mention the, nasty context to it. We're just saying that, there has been a fertilization that needn't not continue, whose opinion should be respected, a third party or the bearer of the child. And you have praised your own opinion effectively, that my opinion overrides that of the human being. So you have effectively subjugated that person to your own will, which is coded slavery. You see how words spin. So I'm not surprised when I hear things like there is a wipeout. of members of race X. So you can see how words just build and build until they turn into something else. How did we get from pro-life to slavery? How did we? You subjugated a random person you don't know to your own delusion. Again, don't be offended by that word. People who support these ideas. Delusion, please. You subjugated someone else entirely to your own idea, which is, set your own conscience. Yes, you agreed. You don't agree that, but at the end of the day, it isn't you who bears the child. And okay, you aren't the one that's bearing the child. The one who wants to bear the child insists otherwise, yet you insist that your opinion weighs more value than the opinion of someone else. And this isn't even like we argue things like, but we tell children what to do all the time. They don't know better. This is, terminations have been done for centuries at this point. We have the data to say that terminations are relatively safe. It's not like telling a child not to put their hand over fire. No, this isn't the same boat. At all, it is not the same boat. Even with children, there are some things we can't tell children to do, or it's relatively immoral to tell children to do. Like many people argue, and I would support, and haven't seen reason to not support, telling a child what line of studies to pursue in academia, should they want to invest in academia. You understand? Because you might make the argument that, oh no, that line of work doesn't really produce promising careers and all of that. But at the end of the day, even if the child eventually comes to regret it, at least they'll know that it's their fault and not that they'll be wondering, if my dad didn't tell me to go and do medicine and I had done law, whatever. No, at least they'll know that it's their fault. If at least you it even serves you. You are absolved of any blame. But the moral thing is, even if they call some absurd cost or something that sounds absurd to you, the moral thing in that situation is you pour your support as the child's guardian or the child's, elder figure. All right, so that's just one key position on this whole right-wing thing that he supported and pushed. And will we say that it was a good one? Me, I won't say it was a good one. You understand? I won't agree that it was a good thing pushing this whole pro-life thing. And the wording of these terms is very deceptive. It's very deceptive because it's just like how they were weaponizing Black Lives Matter. That one is I don't even want to get into that one. But yeah, you saying, oh, you don't support life? No. That's childish attacks. And I don't think he made those kinds of, or at least that I saw. Even if he did, I don't think his supporters should be throwing those kinds of videos around. They wouldn't make him look good at all. So that was, that's just one of his core principles that we've discussed and I have not seen reason to say that this is good or not. So imagine now, just one, but he also has positions like this where if you really want to trace, is it good or is it not good at its core? A lot of them, unfortunately, weren't good. All right? You can say the mode of delivery in some instances for these is communiques. Even made things worse. That one is entirely subjective. Well, I'm talking about the root idea at the end of the day. What is the root idea behind the things that not just him, but these people are espousing? So just that particular one, and which was a big one. I saw the one that dolphin video. Some of you will know the video I'm talking about. That dolphin video is insane. But yes, so can we compare strides made to influence the passing of an act that dismantled a harmful delusion, and also acts that were made towards the reversal of a delusional destruction, right? And a reversal of a decision that now favors the opinion of a few, that subjugates the physical realities of many to the vague desires of a few. Do you get what I'm trying to really arrive at? I know that I've backflipped through the whole structure of this commentary today, but that's just what I wanted to come at. I planned on talking about other things, but this is already long enough. Let me just pause here, and if I want to make like some other commentary on this later on, maybe I will, but that I'm going to censor myself unnecessarily, because not necessarily that this had me thinking, oh, I got one life. No, but yeah, I do have just one life, and I don't want a situation where I'll be like, what if I had? So I actually considered doing a whole second channel many times, and in fact I even did, but I don't think it would have made sense. Maybe eventually I would, maybe just to make things neat. I like when things are organized, although these kinds of videos, in my view, they still work on this channel really. But I know for a lot of you, it might destabilize you. Now, it's not necessarily that this channel is still in its infancy. No, this channel has been around for almost 3 years now. 3 years since the first video. Now, this account has been active it's been a while. But 3 years since the first public video. So, I believe they belong here. And I'll still give my thoughts on, why we're here. The 3D in SOB 3D. In fact, I even have a hot one. That one, I don't know if I'll publish it soon. I'm worried about that one. I already have the points written out. It's scheduled to be my next Friday video, so look out for that. Also, check out the one that I did today. Okay, or be yesterday. No. The one about the genres. Let me know what you think. Did you find the things I said there informative? Talked about Afrobeats and how some people are confusing Afrobeats and Amapiano. Why are you guys doing that? I did 2 on Thursday, 2 on one day. I'm sure YouTube is all looking at me like, what's going on? And then they'll see another one today like, Abi, what's going on? So, yeah, bottom line for this one, where we're going to draw the curtain right now is, you can see the logic that I try to use to determine if something is actually good and if something is actually bad. And now, where the half-mast on one end feels sour and the half-mast on the other end feels justified, all right? But I also acknowledge that, hey, I'm just coming off of literally, I told you, RE class for when it comes to LMK, and just some, shady, not shady per se, but just some clipped videos. Probably they were out of context videos, but before you come with that out of context crap, don't say it's just out of context. Say why, say what parts. Don't do, you're just watching out of. I hate all those blanket comments. Those ones are the worst grade of comments so people can make. What is the out of context there? You mention it, all right, and don't just come here and say vague things and try and make a point. Grow up. Yeah, so you can see I try to explain my thought process as clearly as possible, as well as said one is good, one is bad. If you don't agree, which part didn't you agree? Tell me which part isn't good, or where you think I missed the logic. My concern is logic. All those, I'm this side, I'm that whole, like I said, that thing is a prison. You're just imprisoning yourself. Even I assume maybe if the right wing one has some unsavory ideas, maybe the left wing is like the one and opposite kind of thing. Even you tell yourself you're left wing, you tell yourself you're right wing. I don't know if there's a center wing, I don't know. Maybe trunk. Abdomen. Brain. But you tell yourself you're this wing, you're that other wing. Let logic lead, let empathy lead, let nuance lead, let reasoning lead, let, sense. A lot of you people don't understand sense in that regard, but yeah, let logic lead, let humanity lead, all right? And not your delusions. or not your preconceived notions. Let me use that one, not delusion. Your preconceived notions of life and how society should work. Really analyze all those things you believe. Like I said on Thursday, you support a system that put yourself at the worst part of that system, and how would you feel? How would you feel? And the worst part of that system is not prison, because some people will read it like, well, if I'm in a working system and I'm in prison, it would still be justified. No. Prison is that you did something and then you went to prison. I'm thinking you are just born. Do you get? You are just born, or things that are not necessarily in your control happened. Or exactly. So that's what I mean by the worst. Not that you committed crime and went to prison. That's not the worst. That you committed the crime. Yeah, so that's just it. MLK, good. This guy that I can decipher right now, not so good. But ultimately, I have no say. Jesus, I have no say in whether somebody should get a half-mast or not. The half-mast has been given. The half-mast has been given. Do I disagree with it per se? Admittedly, I'm indifferent to it. It's just that I saw a lot of reactions to it. I'm like, okay, let me give it a thought out loud, because this is recorder. Yeah, so initially I was indifferent to it. Is when I was like, so, this one didn't get half-mast. They apparently, even some politicians too, short. That's crazy. This one didn't get half-mast, but this guy got half-mast. I said, well, let me just try and decipher if truly every notable death warrants the half-mast. And if we're to go by the logic of good, positive contribution to society, by my current frame of thinking, well, I don't think so, but I can never, well, not that I can never, basically I can never at this point in my life really be in a position to order a half-mast in the United States on behalf of some person. So, yeah. What do you agree? Would you have greenlit the half-mast? Americans listening to this, would you have greenlit the half-mast? Let me know. Thank you again for being here. No, this one is long. Maybe I'll edit this one just a bit. Maybe if there's like major silence gaps in between takes and all of that, I'll cut them out. But I just want it to be that thoughts were poured out, and you guys can listen and form your own opinions if you're here long enough, really, till the end. This is I don't want to say the duration because I might do some compressing, because these files are heavy when they get this long. But yeah, I think I'll call it a day for this one. Thank you again for listening, and see you in the next one. Okay, so today is Saturday. If I'm not doing anything tomorrow and Monday, then obviously I'm always creating. Always, that one is always. So if I'm not doing any creating or recording or filming tomorrow on Monday, then it's still Tuesday, but I might be tempted to come back here. I know that I'll see something. In fact, now as I'm seeing things, it's probably going to be some irrelevant thing that doesn't even concern you. I'll just come here, record, upload. Listen if you want to listen. Don't listen if you don't want to. So most likely Tuesday is the next planned production. But in between Tuesday, probably even still today, in between Tuesday and today, I think we're good to go for the third time. Thank you and see you later.